Hello, I'm Nathan P. Butler, author of a Saga on home video and host of From the Star Wars Home Video Library here on YouTube, and this is Star Wars Home Video Year by Year. This time we take a look at 2005. Oh, we are in for a lot this time. 2005 is a massive year for Star Wars Home Video. You have Revenge of the Sith coming out, you have some re-releases, you have some TV series hitting home video in the US, and then some sort of delayed releases coming out of other regions. You have George Lucas getting an award that includes a home video item, and you got some odds and ends kind of stuff. There is a ton for us to cover here for 2005. I'll try to make it quick, but I got a feeling this will be one of our longer episodes. Let's get into it. For context here, this of course is the year that Revenge of the Sith hits theaters. It gets released on home video in the same year. There's also the year that Clone Wars microseries Season 3 airs on television, and we will see that this is the year that all the seasons of that get released on home video. This is the year that George Lucas gets the AFI Life Achievement Award. It's the year that the What's the Story contest begins on StarWars.com, which allows fans to basically submit backstories for certain individual items that could then become part of the official backstory. I actually did that and had a little piece of explanation that I provided for the DC-0052 speeder, the intergalactic speeder, that was added into the official entry, though mine was not the bulk of that entry. That was the Dark Moose who did that primarily. And this is also the year of Celebration 3, which will be providing us with some home video items this time around. A busy year. So we'll start with the original trilogy. In 2004, we saw the original trilogy hit DVD for the very first time. It was those boxed sets, two of them in the United States, full screen and widescreen, though in most regions it was just widescreen, as I've mentioned ad nauseum last time around. And those packages had all three films in their own cases inside the slipcover, but also a bonus features disc, which included bonus features for the entire trilogy, stuff like Empire of Dreams, trailers, and that sort of thing. Well, here in 2005, we get sort of a stripped-down version of that as a family pack, meant to be a little more budget-friendly as a reissue of those discs already on home video. And in the US, as expected, you get a widescreen version. And again, it's just the same old packages inside that we saw the previous year, no changes there. And then there was a full-screen version of the same thing. So again, we are going with silver for widescreen, gold for full screen in the US, and yes, we are getting both. That reissue did come out in other regions, but again, most regions did not have that distinction between full screen and widescreen because there wasn't a full screen version. In Japan, you get one. Very similar. I really like how glossy this one is. But again, inside, no need for the marker about widescreen because widescreen is the only type. Similarly, with the UK, they got their own version of the set. Again, no need, if I can go from the right side there, no need for the markers there at the top. Now, one thing we don't see a whole lot because it typically shares most features with the US market is the Canadian market. But I have here one that I can show you at least to show you one key thing about the Canadian market that we sometimes see, and that is bilingual packaging. Most Canadian items need French and English on them. So here we have English and French widescreen, English and French trilogy, English with French titles underneath for the titles there. And then for the actual discs inside and the packages inside, it's effectively just what we saw in the US. So it's really just the slipcover that needed to be augmented to meet this bilingual need. Of course, the biggest thing here in 2005 was the home video release of Revenge of the Sith. The prequel trilogy was over. The Star Wars films, as far as Lucas was concerned, at least at the time, were over. Because remember, he went from saying that the series was one film, with just it being A New Hope without its subtitle, then it was going to be 12 films starting with that one, then it was 9 films with that one as number 4, and then I only ever meant to be 6. Eventually it will be I never said anyone else couldn't make them, but that's a whole separate thing. So the saga was effectively complete at this point, and now hitting home video. For home video collectors, it won't really be a complete collection, though, unfortunately, at least not in the United States, because in the US, we don't get a VHS release at all of Revenge of the Sith. We'll talk about that more here in just a moment. All we got was DVD, but this is an era with a lot more store exclusives going on, so quite a few different options for picking it up on DVD. So let's take a look at Revenge of the Sith, starting with DVD, despite the fact that other regions did get VHS. We'll look at our DVDs, some other regions DVDs, and then we'll shift over to look at VHS from other regions, VCD, as we kind of make our way through looking at Revenge of the Sith here. So in the US, there were two different versions, as you would expect. The gold widescreen version here. I will show you what the film disc and bonus disc here look like, because the bonus disc will matter momentarily. And there is a full screen blue copy. So even in the same year, we have the silver and gold widescreen full screen type of thing going on with the re-release of the original trilogy, and yet we're still sticking with the gold and blue for Revenge of the Sith for the prequels. Come on, guys, get it together. Once again, tons of awesome bonus features on the second disc, absolutely chock full. This was the way to watch Revenge of the Sith at home, at least for now. If you went to Target, you could get one of these. It's basically just the widescreen or full screen version. We'll see full screen in a second, with a little slip-on piece of cardboard here, usually in shrink wrap when you buy it, of course, over the entire thing, with a little commemorative coin that is exclusive to Target on the inside. And again, yes, there is a full screen version of this as well. Here's a closer look at that coin. Yes, I do have a spare one here. It's one side and the other there. If you were a Best Buy Reward Zone member and picked up either the film or Battlefront 2, you could have gotten this lithograph. Have a nice large lithograph here. We'll see more of this type of thing in the future. Walmart had their own exclusive version, and it was basically a separate DVD. So you had your widescreen or your full screen copy, either way, and it would be packaged in shrink wrap, a little sticker in between them, just packaged in shrink wrap, with this DVD over here. That DVD is The Story of Star Wars. And basically what this is, if that name sounds familiar to you, you might remember that was basically a little PVD set for the Video Now player that included 3 discs, one of which was behind-the-scenes stuff, the other 2 of which were the story of Anakin Skywalker and the story of Luke Skywalker. Well, those are combined to get us this bonus DVD with this label here. Now, I note the label here. Why? Because you will sometimes find out in the wild a misprint version of the widescreen version of Revenge of the Sith. I've never seen it on full screen. It might exist, but for widescreen for sure, where you look inside and there's your film disc and there's your bonus features disc. And it is the bonus features disc in terms of content, but they put the wrong label on it. Instead of the correct label from the bonus features disc, they gave it the label from Story of Star Wars. But Walmart was not the only place to get the Story of Star Wars, because Sam's Club is from the same owners, and they had their own enormous version here. This is the widescreen version, says it over here, and the full screen version. So they got basically a club packaging version of the exclusive to include both Revenge of the Sith and Story of Star Wars in their own club packaging. If you went to any other clubs or you were picking up a version that did not include the bonus disc, you would have those options again for club packaging, widescreen, and full screen, only this time I have yet to see any evidence that there ever was a generic version. It appears to have just been either the slim or the Sam's Club large versions. Now, if you went to Burger King, they were promoting the heck out of the release of Revenge of the Sith on DVD with their Complete the Saga promotion, which actually had 2 angles. One thing you could get by picking them up individually was these. I'd say, well, what is this? Episode 1, Episode 2, Episode 3, Episode 4, 5, 6. What in the world are these? These are, in their individual tins, these are watches. Yes, a set of 6 little commemorative watches, 1 per film. Their kids' meals also had special Star Wars toys in them. There were 17 of these to collect. One is kind of a limited edition Vader. We'll see here at the end for reasons that'll be obvious when I show you. It's kind of the oddball that doesn't fit into any other categories. The other 16 are divided into 4 different categories of 4 each. They came in these kind of packages here. They had these little booklet type things inside like this. You have the Jedi Wisdom with Kit Fisto, Mace Windu, Yoda, and Obi-Wan, and they're basically like little magic 8-ball kind of things that show a little thing at the bottom you can barely see, like in this case, it says I have a bad feeling. Then you have your shadow casters, like Padme, Bail, Stormtrooper, and R2-D2. None of mine really work anymore. I'm surprised I was able to take a picture for the book a few years ago, but basically you press a button on them, and there's a little hole that shines a little red image onto whatever surface you're next to. Then you have the Galactic Spinners, which are Anakin, Palpatine, looks very green here, Luke, and Chewie. And the way these work is you pop off the tops, and they got a little spinny thing, and you just like spin them like a top, basically. You can maybe have them battle each other or something. Then finally you got the Cosmic Cruisers, which will be the N1 Starfighter, Vulture Droid, your Snow Speeder, Air Speeder, Arc 170, and basically these have a little key type thing that goes with them that you stick inside, and then when you press the button, they fire off and zip around on their wheels. The last one, and I'm trying to cover it up here, is Vader. It's different than all the other sets. You press the button, and it's supposed to make a breathing sound. I accidentally pressed the button a moment ago, and now it's just doing this constantly. Probably forever, because it still hasn't stopped. I'm going to have to sit this in another room after I stop recording and let the battery completely run out before I put it in here, or it's going to drive me absolutely bonkers. But that was number 17. Outside the United States, we got some cool DVDs to look at as well. Of course, in Japan, no need for it to say widescreen or anything, so this is our Japanese DVD release here, otherwise very similar to what we saw out of the United States. We likewise see that design in Turkey. We'll see a Turkish VCD of Revenge of the Sith here in a little bit. But this just helps us to emphasize the fact that it wasn't just that they were only getting VCD. It's not like they didn't have DVD. VCD, though, was just an option there as a cheaper version as opposed to getting an actual DVD. It's a middle ground between VHS era and DVD era to an extent, coexisting with both. From another place starting with a T that we really haven't seen a whole heck of a lot, from Thailand. Very different design here for their DVD. Inside, effectively the same, except for the local title there, but a slipcover that is very different than the design that we see, for the most part, elsewhere. And speaking of slipcovers, we know that Australia had those Easy DVD limited edition versions of the initial releases of all 3 prequel films with their special slipcovers and all that. Well, they continued that here with Revenge of the Sith. So we have a nice matching set of these, not necessarily the same art, but 3 of them from Easy DVD with special slipcovers and all, but inside, again, just kind of what you would normally expect to see. That thing I dropped there is just the paper from the back from when it's in shrink wrap. And interestingly, this time HMV in the UK actually got their own exclusive version with a special slipcover that looks a lot like what we just saw out of Australia, but whereas Australia was a side-loading sort of slipcover, this is just a top-loading slip-on kind of slipcover. Again, over just the regular version because they do not need it to say widescreen because we were the only place, for the most part, still clinging to widescreen and full screen as somehow needing both options. Now, just like we saw in 2004, they decided to commemorate the DVD release of Revenge of the Sith with some action figure packs. Again, 3 this time, no DVD included. They are just to commemorate the DVD release. They do not have home video items in them themselves, unlike some we will see later on. So we had set number 1 here. This is known as the Jedi Knights pack with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Mace Windu. We have set number 2, known as the Sith Lords pack with Palpatine, Dooku, and Vader. And then we have set number 3, known appropriately as the Clone Troopers pack with 3 different Clone Troopers, simply noted as a Clone Trooper squad in terms of what it lists on the back for them, and just Clone Troopers underneath there. But again, artwork for the film, but it's commemorating the DVD release, but does say DVD not included up there on the top. And yes, you may have caught that poor Vader's cloak has fallen off inside the packaging and is rattling around for that Sith Lords one, but I haven't opened the packs, so it just gets to rattle around. Those won't even be the last figure packs we see this year. Now, as I mentioned before, the US did not get a VHS release at all of Revenge of the Sith. It means that American audiences do not get to have a full prequel trilogy or a full Lucas episodes 1 through 6 collection on VHS at all in the US, and yes, that sucks. There are fan recreations of that sort of thing floating around with sort of mock-up cases. Just know that those are not legitimate. Obviously, it literally didn't exist in the US. But it did exist elsewhere. The US didn't get a VHS, but many other markets did. Probably the most common to see in American collections is from the UK. This is a UK retail version. There's also a UK rental version, again, much larger than retail. Elsewhere in Europe, for example, we have from Finland, Sith Kosto, one of my favorite foreign titles for a Star Wars film. So Finland got one. Those, of course, are PAL. In France, you get a CCAM copy as well. Then we have releases out of Japan. Mine happens to be a rental copy here from Japan. And one of the cooler designed packages, in my opinion, is the one here out of South Korea. So yes, there were plenty of places in the world that got Revenge of the Sith on VHS, just not the United States. Internationally, of course, we were still in the era of VCDs, so we have quite a few different VCD variations for Revenge of the Sith. So from Indonesia, you have a package that looks very much kind of like a DVD case with a little slip cover here to go over top of it. Similarly, you have the release here coming out of Malaysia. Kind of an interesting thing in that the slip cover comes off the side, but it's the opposite side to what we would normally think of in the US as the quote-unquote normal side. But there's its VCD. You have an interesting one coming out of Singapore, a small one, but it's basically a jewel case with a slip cover over it that goes on like this. Like we're used to thinking of these going kind of like so. No, it's vertical this time around. Then we finish out the Turkish dubbed set from Turkey. And we finish out the Fancy Schmancy set coming out of Hong Kong. Now with Revenge of the Sith hitting home video, the film is out. The lead up to the film is basically over. And that means that the lead up series, the Clone Wars micro series, can finally get home video releases as well, as I alluded to very early on here in this relatively long video. So in the US, you had, and this is the case across the board, you had a Volume 1 release. This is kind of a cool release. It has lots of bonus features on the single disc here. But basically what they did was they took all of seasons 1 and 2, chopped off the intros and the credits, ran them together, flipped the order of a couple episodes, but then created what is basically a feature film length version that feels pretty good for Clone Wars Volume 1. Again, of seasons 1 and 2, the little episodes are just, 2 to 3 minutes or so each. This flows better than what we saw certainly with Ewoks when they did that, and with droids, they're about equivalent, because droids, of course, it was an arc, and this is essentially an arc type of thing. Plays very well here. There is also a Volume 2, and this is the combination of those longer episodes from Season 3 as Volume 2. So it's essentially Seasons 1, 2, 3 when it comes to these, which can be a little bit confusing. And yes, you could get them at club stores, so fancy schmancy club store anti-theft packaging. So for Volume 1, we have the light generic packaging. I have not seen a light generic package for Volume 2. It may exist, just haven't seen it myself. When it comes to Volume 1, you've got packaging specific to Volume 1 here that's pretty cool. And then an incredibly rare one coming out of BJ's Wholesale Club with different art, which is thicker here because it's not just the DVD, it's also a digest-sized comic. This comic that was released to retail just as a regular part of that Clone Wars Adventure series just gets a reprint. Exact same thing, no different cover or anything. Here in the club exclusive, BJ's Wholesale Club exclusive version of Volume 1 in the anti-theft packaging. Then you have Volume 2. I've only ever seen one version of Volume 2 here. It has its own film-specific packaging, and at the time they also re-released or reissued the releases of Volume 1 from earlier that year, and for whatever reason, used the same packaging. I actually left mine sealed because it is hard to believe that this could possibly be legitimate, that they put Volume 1 that already had its own specific packaging into mismatched packaging for Volume 2, but yes, they did. Now these, thankfully, by the way, are just regular discs. They are not flipper discs like what we saw with Ewoks, droids, and the Ewok telemovies in the US the previous year. And of course, these were released in other regions. We've got UK versions here and Japanese versions as well. And hey, what's a new Star Wars DVD release, unless it's Ewoks, droids, or Ewok Adventures, I guess, without another commemorative figure pack line? So, with the release of Clone Wars Volume 1, we get 2 figure packs. This one is ARC Trooper, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. This is known as the Jedi Force pack, commemorative DVD collection up there at the top. Again, DVD not included. Tells you right there. And then you had the bad guys here with General Grievous, ASOHV, Ventress, and Dirge in the so-called Sith Attack Pack. But of course, Volume 2 also got released on DVD, so it needs a set of packs. These with black instead of white packaging here. So we have this one that has a Cody, Grievous, and Obi-Wan there. Again, DVD not included. Notes there up at the top and elsewhere. And then you've got this one with, say, EC-10, Anakin, and just a generic clone trooper. And speaking of Japan with animated series on DVD, they finally got their releases of Ewoks and droids that we saw in the US the previous year in 2005. So they were a little bit later. But they got actual freaking labels on the discs for these. Double layer, non-flipper discs. Was it really that hard? Apparently in the US, that was just too much to ask. And of course, since they're getting Droids and Ewoks animated features, the double feature DVDs in 2005, that's also when they get their Ewok Adventures in Japan, which, very much like what we saw with Australia last time, yes, again, just like the others, gets a dual layer DVD with an actual label on it rather than a crappy flipper disc. Now, along with the release of Revenge of the Sith, not on home video, but in theaters earlier in the year, we also saw the release of its soundtrack. And you might say, well, what does a soundtrack have to do with anything related to Star Wars home video? Well, this soundtrack actually came with a bonus DVD, as we will see. So this is the regular version of that initial release here in the US of the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack. And if you open it up, you will find, obviously, the soundtrack, but continue opening, and inside you will find Star Wars: A Musical Journey. You may remember that things like Duel of the Fates, Across the Stars, and whatnot, when it was time to release the soundtracks, actually got music videos that were sort of like the music with clips of the film kind of playing with them to make sort of an audio montage, sort of. It's basically a music video for the instrumental music, using clips of the films, like an elaborate musical trailer kind of thing. Well, they did that throughout the entirety of the 6-episode saga, at the time, to give us a musical journey on DVD, which came with the soundtrack and these initial releases of Revenge of the Sith. So you got the regular version, you have another of those anti-theft long boxes. This is actually much more common for CDs than it was for DVDs, but an anti-theft kind of long box here. And in the US, you had a couple of exclusives. At Walmart, you would find one with a little extra sticker here denoting a downloadable little interview with a little code on a little slip here. Unfortunately, that doesn't work anymore. Something with a little more staying power was what we got out of Target. So Target had their own version indicating also contains exclusive all-new Star Wars CD. What is that? Well, packaged in with this in the shrink wrap was this little slipcase type jacket version of the Corellian edition, which was a sort of compilation Star Wars soundtrack with music across the saga again. Now, with this, there was eventually a retail release. This came in 2007. But if you wanted to get it in 2005, you needed to get the exclusive edition packaged in with the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack at Target. And of course, all of those have that DVD inside, hence being part of the Star Wars home video library. Other regions got similar stuff. In the UK, Amazon UK had a couple of different exclusive slip covers. I happen to have the orange one here. But again, it's just basically the soundtrack in there, little advertising slip, with the DVD of A Musical Journey on the inside. Nothing particularly fancy schmancy there, other than the cool slipcover, of course. And then Japan, they got one as well. Just a kind of an across-the-board kind of thing, but a cool little additional feature to add into the soundtrack that gave it a little bit more of a draw for those who might not usually pick up soundtracks. Now, beyond Revenge of the Sith, there were plenty of things helping to promote the release of the film. One thing you would find in the UK or in Australia was what was referred to as the Heroes and Villains DVDs. So in the UK, you had two of these. The Sun newspaper put out this Collector's Edition DVD, Heroes and Villains, Don't miss tomorrow's Star Wars Villains DVD and News of the World. So it's Heroes and Villains, but actually what is inside there, if you initially got it through the paper, is just the Heroes disc for the UK. But notice there's a space there for a Villains disc. And then you would get the News of the World newspaper and get the other one, which is Villains, which is just a little sleeve, no folding here. And there's your Villains disc inside there. And the idea was, yes, I have another one, is that you would put your Villains disc inside the Heroes and Villains one from the previous day and have both in one place, and you wouldn't need this packaging at all anymore. But there was a Heroes disc and a Villains disc separately, even if packaged together in the UK. On the other hand, if you were in Australia, there was a Heroes version of the disc through the Daily Telegraph. Star Wars Heroes, much more busy of a label here. Not a big fan of the labels of the Australian ones. But then you also had a Villains one through still the Daily Telegraph with the Villains version of the disc here. But then if you went through the Herald Sun Sunday edition, there was a combined Heroes and Villains, which is not both discs, it's actually one disc with all the stuff. But these are one of the little product lines out there that has no US equivalent at all. Speaking of promotions, there were 3 promotional DVDs that could be found this time around at Celebration 3. So if you were a fan of Sideshow Collectibles with their little statuette kind of figures and stuff like that, you could have picked up this. This is the only one of these that's specific to Star Wars. They do a lot of these promotional ones through Sideshow, but they're just Sideshow specific to their broad product line. This is the only one that is Star Wars themed. So you have Star Wars Sideshow Collectibles, an alliance is formed, which is just kind of information about their product line and whatnot. More interesting to me because I was a big fan of the books at the time, especially the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, and someone who did fan audio, like fan audio dramas and stuff like that for years. You have It's a Big Universe, which is basically the making of a Star Wars audiobook. So it's focused in on primarily the Revenge of the Sith audiobook and kind of how that is made and all that. Short, but a very cool little DVD here. So DVD, also DVD. And then another promo DVD here, which I'll take out of its little generic packaging here. And that is a promo DVD for the Trivial Pursuit Star Wars. It's going to be the Saga edition, but it doesn't say that on here. But Trivial Pursuit Star Wars for Celebration 3 limited edition bonus DVD. It's basically just, a sample question from among the categories, but still a pretty cool thing to promote the Star Wars Trivial Pursuit set for that year, which includes DVDs of questions. That, of course, gives us a nice segue to look at the Trivial Pursuit DVD Star Wars Saga edition, which released this year. It's another instance, just like that Star Wars interactive VHS board game back in the day, where we have a board game that includes home video style content, in this case, a couple of DVDs. This is the regular US version here. It is a full-fledged board game of Trivial Pursuit, but when you're going for the pie wedge, basically, you will use questions off of DVDs instead of off of the cards. So you have DVD 1 and DVD 2 here. We'll just look at one of them as an example. There's DVD 1. But basically there were different sets of questions so that you wouldn't necessarily see the same questions every time. But it was essentially just, you put it in, you select the category, you hit play, it plays the little clip, and that's a cool little puzzle type questions here that you really couldn't get off of just verbal questions from a card. Kind of neat. There are, by the way, other versions of Star Wars Trivial Pursuit games. This is the only one thus far that actually includes DVDs, hence the only one to show here. But that is not to say there weren't variants to look at. At some club stores, I believe it was BJ's Wholesale Club, I have yet to actually get confirmation of that, you had this package, which is basically the US version here, but it came with a figure attached to it, and the figures tended to vary. Mine happens to be Yoda, but I've seen this with other figures as well, all from that same Revenge of the Sith era product line. You could also get a limited edition if you were to pick it up at Toys R Us. Now, you can see these 2 different ways. There's this look here, with all the stuff on it. There's also this look here without all the stuff. That is not a different version. That stuff is basically a sticker. So when you remove the sticker from the packaging to just get down to the tin itself, this is what the tin looks like underneath. And these were a numbered limited edition at Toys R Us. Other regions did get their own versions of the game. This is a UK base version of the game. We will see the UK actually get some streamlined versions of this game the next year, but that's to look at in 2006. This year's busy enough. And the release timing of that, of course, was designed to help promote Revenge of the Sith. And what else was promoting Revenge of the Sith out there that might be a little bit weird, like a board game? Well, how about a weird VHS set coming out of Bulgaria through a cell phone company, B-Connect. This little package here was designed to promote Revenge of the Sith in theaters initially. But if you open it up, you kind of take your cassettes out, you have sort of an interior package there. You can see this more in the episode that I dedicated to it or in a Saga on Home Video. A little guide to the cool little features and stuff of your cell phone and the kind of things you could get as, like apps and wallpapers and stuff for your cell phone at the time. It's 2005. But then inside were Bulgarian VHS releases of Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. It's kind of like a Saga video pack from 2002, only from a cell phone company and actually promoting Revenge of the Sith actively rather than trying to treat itself as something kind of whole unto itself. Speaking of oddball things that don't include Revenge of the Sith but do include the other two prequel films, George Lucas got his AFI, American Film Institute Lifetime or Life Achievement Award in 2005. It had actually been offered previously. He turned it down. He didn't feel like he had gotten to that point in his career yet, and then he did accept it when it was offered this time around. So, at the time, you got the advertisements all over the place. Congratulations to George Lucas. Congratulations to George Lucas. Congratulations to George Lucas. Hey, we're going to have a special tribute issue and so on. But they had George Lucas's little ceremony that actually aired on USA Television Network here in the US. This is probably best known as the one where Carrie Fisher kind of roasts George Lucas. It's the one where William Shatner winds up singing Your Way as a version of My Way from Sinatra to George Lucas as one of the presenters. It is actually one for which I've got a few little behind the scenes things that I wound up picking up over the years from people who were part of the event. Production schedule kind of thing I picked up. For the audio, the music behind William Shatner when he was doing Your Way, this is at least one version of that music on CD, I'm assuming used at the ceremony itself. Seating arrangements and stuff like that. But if you were an attendee, one of the things you may have received, and I say may because not everybody got everything, you may have received one of these cool little books for George Lucas. It's basically a rundown of his career. But even better, you might have been one of those special fancy attendees and walked out with a swag bag. People usually think of this event, if they think of it at all in home video context, as where you would get this. The AFI Life Achievement DVD set for George Lucas. And that's true from a certain point of view. That package is actually part of a bigger package. The bigger package is this thing here from the American Film Institute. It is a literal swag bag. What's inside? We got a Revenge of the Sith era action figure of some kind. Mine happens to be Grievous. I don't know that it changed for different packages. My guess is that it probably did, just like the figure for the special version there of Trivial Pursuit Saga Edition. You have a copy of the A New Hope soundtrack on CD. You have a copy of the novelization of A New Hope, credited to George Lucas, but ghostwritten by Alan Dean Foster from 1976. This is a newer printing, obviously. You have yourself your nice little folder. I'm assuming this may have just been on the table, but again, this is basically just the seating arrangement kind of information. And you had, as I grab it from the shelf for a more convenient one than trying to get it out of that bag that's pretty tight, the actual DVD package. George Lucas, AFI Life Achievement Award, does have AFI and USA TV Network on the side. And basically what this is an incredibly fragile acrylic container. That's why it's very hard to order these through the mail, through eBay or something, because a lot of times the acrylic package will crack when it's on the way to you. A little card at the top with GL and information about the award and how it's airing on USA and all that. And then inside, you have a collection of Lucas's works to sort of demonstrate why he's getting this award. And you'll notice here that is a 2004 original trilogy 4-disc DVD set. The Indiana Jones DVD set there that includes, again, the 3 films and a bonus disc. 3 films at the time. You have the 2-disc widescreen DVD versions of episodes 1 and 2. No 3. It's 2005, but it hadn't come out yet. THX 1138, the George Lucas director's cut, and then American Graffiti. So if you were trying to celebrate Lucas as this great visionary filmmaker, then this was a way to do that, to sort of see a nice wide swath of his filmmaking all in one very fragile package as part of this eclectic swag bag. You typically don't see the bag and all the other stuff on eBay very often. These will come up from time to time, but again, they are incredibly fragile to ship. So it can be a little problematic managing to get one of these. I have mine that was my original one here. I have one that I got that I had to repair on the inside. That's sort of my backup sitting in the closet. And then I have the one that's actually in the bag itself. But yeah, very nice set, but unfortunately so fragile that without being rare already, it became even more rare because as time goes by and people try to acquire these, less and less of them wind up still being intact. 2005 also saw the second and last Star Wars PVD release. Remember, we saw this one back in 2004, 3 discs, the story of Anakin Skywalker, the story of Luke Skywalker, as we now know, of course, that then became that story of Star Wars DVD content later, plus a behind-the-scenes disc. Well, the discs were given new labels, and the behind-the-scenes one was completely redone, but the other one stayed the same for a 2005 second set here. And different labels, but effectively the same content, except whereas any of these you could play the video content on a regular Video Now player. This is a Video Now Color FX player. If you had a special Video Now XP player, one of these suckers, you can actually play an interactive game now on that behind-the-scenes disc for this 2005 release. And it wasn't just the US getting Video Now releases, we also saw a release in 2005 of something very much like what we saw in 2004 from the US in Australia. This was also the year of the second of the 4 bonus lightsaber action DVDs. We saw the first one in 2004. In 2005, they weren't actually in character-specific lightsaber toys, but in some of the ultimate lightsaber toys where you sort of build your own saber, they were included. This time, this was the packaging. Okay, so you had more information about it than what was on the one in 2004, and kind of color scheme very much like the ultimate lightsaber here. And then the disc is actually in the sleeve with a window to actually see the disc itself, but the disc and its contents are identical to 2004 this time. Now, if you wanted to go for something crazy fancy this year to round us out for 2005, you could have gotten this. This is the fancy schmancy deluxe edition of the book Dressing a Galaxy. I'll take off the little band here, this little nice band that goes around it, this thing here. And you have this giant container with a whole lot of stuff inside. You have the Dressing a Galaxy book. There's actually more stuff behind it, including a whole other book and a little folder. As stuff is banging around here, a folder here with like fabric swaths from different costumes. But the thing that matters to us as home video collectors is that on this side with this giant buckle replica fabric swath from Vader's cape and a certificate of authenticity is a DVD down there for Dressing a Galaxy. It's a little supplemental DVD with little features about the costumes of Star Wars, primarily the prequels. But this is actually the first of 2 instances here that we'll see of these books that give you great insights, getting this fancy schmancy limited edition that has a bunch of extra stuff, including a DVD only found in that package. These tend to be pretty expensive these days. They were expensive to begin with, but on the secondary market, even more so. Wow, that was an enormous year. And we still have a pretty chock-full 2006 to come as well before things calm down for a little bit. The prequels have all been released, but there's no box set of them at this point. The original trilogy has come out on DVD a couple of times. Next year will be highlighted by the original trilogy coming out again, this time with these so-called unaltered editions on bonus discs. More about that and how all of that worked as we take a look next time at 2006.